Hi, I'm Julie Marsh, founder of BU Consultancy and Coaching, and I'm here today to talk to you about managing your motivation. So, before we begin, I'd like to take some time out just to introduce myself. As mentioned, I'm Julie, I'm the founder of BU Consultancy and Coaching, which is based in Peterborough within the UK. And I'm really honoured to be with you all today, and also I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. I'm one of those people, as you can see, that is always doing something. So managing my motivation is so important to me to make sure I can get through the list of activities, smash my goals, and succeed at what I've really set my heart on. BU Consultancy and Coaching was founded in 2022, and we provide a range of services to individuals from sole traders through to organisations, whether they're looking at understanding their motivational drivers to get the best out of their performance in the business, coaching, training, or HR consultancy. What I do is I work with customers to unlock their potential for future success. And at BU, our values are based on how we show up, ensuring we empower all individuals, remaining curious about everything that we're working on and who we're working with, and building our community. And as part of our community, I work a lot within the community, whether that's being an emergency foster mum for bulldogs, which is part of my work with Phoenix, working with schools on their student career strategy. And I'm also a trustee for Peterborough Rape Crisis and have been for many years. But what does all of that have to do with motivation? Well, for me, it's about understanding your authentic self, understanding who you are and how you work, and therefore what drives your motivation. When you have all of that information, you can truly manage your motivation in the best possible way. So let's take a look at this some more. When we think about managing our motivation, we need to build our understanding around what motivation actually is before we can manage it. So let's take some time out and have a look at the motivational mindset. As you can see from the slide, we have 6 areas of the motivational mindset. These are goals, performance, attitude, support, ideas and inspiration, and success. We'll go through each of these in more detail and consider the theory. So the first one we're going to look at today is support. The theory of support and actually how that can impact our motivation. Some of you may know this model. For others that don't, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This was actually developed in 1943 and then refined a bit more in 1954. Whilst I appreciate that was a few years ago, it still forms the basis of a lot of theories to this date. The reason for that is that it really underpins how as humans we function and what drives our behaviours and therefore our motivation. If we look at the bottom of the chart, we can see that it's those basics, those concrete foundational needs, making sure that we have food, water, shelter. Once we've established those, we can then move on to focusing on our employment, our health, recognition, learning, and so on. But what happens if we remove one of those foundation levels? Well, it becomes really difficult to focus on other motivational needs and wants. For example, if we were renting a property and were served notice to leave, at that point, and probably for some point after, our motivation tends to only be on finding new shelter, finding a new home. It's really unlikely that we'd be super focused on beauty or being creative or reaching our full potential. As humans, we would naturally want to have our shelter secure. And even if this is a short-term impact to our needs, it can still impact our motivation. And for me, that's where it becomes really important to understand. Not only do we need to have those foundations in place to drive our motivation, If they're taken away or removed for a reason, we may need to redirect our motivation for a time. Another theory that we consider when understanding our motivation is Hertzberg's two-factor theory. So this is a motivation theory, and it suggests that dissatisfaction and satisfaction at work are influenced by two sets of factors: hygiene factors and motivators. Hygiene factors are basic job necessities, such as working conditions and salary that, if aren't met, can really cause dissatisfaction. When looking at this model, consider that the job description is a task. Maybe it's doing the housework, washing the car, putting the bins out. Consider all the ways you can drive your motivation through each of these tasks. So thinking about, are you achieving something? Is there an endpoint, and do you know what that endpoint is? Or are you doing something but you're not really sure why? Are you getting recognition from the task? That may be recognition from someone you know or you don't. It may be verbal, written, physical recognition. Is there responsibility for the task? If you don't do it, will it get completed? What about the work itself? Is it enjoyable? Or do you really need to muster your energy to complete it? And how do you manage that? Will it get you an advancement? What is that, and how do you know when you've got it? And does it enable personal growth? So, to put this into practice, let's look at a job I don't overly enjoy. For me, that's housework. I've got 2 dogs. I can have up to 4, as mentioned, being a foster mum for French bulldogs. So there's always toys, furs and treats around the house. But if we take the motivational factors and break them down, it would be the achievement would be a clean and tidy house. What would the recognition be? Well, I actually reward myself with a coffee after it. What about the responsibility? Well, if I don't do it, it won't get done. The work itself, well, you've probably gathered, I don't particularly like it, but I do enjoy the finished look. And what about the advancement? Well, actually, it's really good for my mental health and it's calming. And for personal growth, it enables me to be more focused when I do sit down to work. So now let's look at the pink area of the slide, the dissatisfaction. And these can externally influence how we feel about what motivates us. The working conditions, employee relations, the policies or the rules, the quality of the supervisor and the salary. By improving these areas, we can decrease job dissatisfaction and therefore increase satisfaction, which in turn drives our influences and our motivation. After our time together today, have a think about a task that you do and how you can use this model to improve those dissatisfaction areas. Another model that we can have a look at is the self-determination theory. And this theory starts with 2 assumptions. One being that human beings strive for growth, and the other is that internal sources of motivation are essential. So when considering this, we look at the basic formula that competence plus belonging plus autonomy equals happiness, well-being and energy. Motivation can be driven through this model. However, it's important to have all 3 of the formula in order to get the outcome. So how can you, in your day-to-day activities, strive for that? So we've had a look at the different theories regarding motivation, what we need as our foundations, what can drive us, and what might impact us. When I consider motivation, I always think about those things, but The next part of understanding motivation for me is being able to measure it, putting data to the motivation to be able to understand it further and to see and feel what that looks like. To measure motivation, I apply motivational maps. This process is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which we went through earlier, which is motivational mapping analysis looks at 3 cluster areas. That's achievement, relationships, and growth. Then within those cluster areas, the process digs deeper on whether you are driven through material satisfaction, being creative, finding the meaning in what you do, or being seen as an expert. When the process has identified your priority motivator through to your lowest one, you're then able to understand how motivated you are against that driver. For example, for me, my main motivator is searcher and then expert. So I like to find the meaning in what I do, and I like to know what I'm doing. I like to be the expert in what I'm doing. That in itself is great to understand. And through this process, I can then understand whether I'm being motivated by what I'm doing or not. When I began BU Consultancy, I really wasn't motivated by either the searcher or the expert, albeit they were my 2 main motivators. But by understanding where I was against them, and through this process, I was able to identify that and then do something about it. About how to improve my motivation, as I had the data. And as a HR soul, I do like my data. As mentioned, motivational maps is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it's actually something that was created by a chap called James Sale, who's based in the UK. The analysis is available for individuals, teams, organisations, and for youths. And we have mappers throughout the globe. The analysis can either be completed virtually or in person. But when we're thinking about motivation, what else can impact that? What about our attitude? When I consider attitude, I think of several areas, and the first one is mind chatter. For me, mine looks like this. They're all the gremlins in my head telling me I can, I can't, I should, I shouldn't, I will, I won't. Now, some people will say that they only have one, and actually a good friend of mine, Jo, has even named hers Edna. That way she can identify and become consciously aware that Edna's talking. Other terminology for mind chatter is monkey mind, mental chatter, but mind chatter often involves negative self-talk, self-criticism, and worry and rumination about previous or future events. Mind chatter is really common amongst all of us and can be especially experienced when we're feeling anxious or feeling stressed. However, this mind chatter can really impact our motivation, what our voices or voices telling us, and how we choose to respond, because remember, in the main, we have a choice on how to respond. If we also think about some theory, we have Freud's 3 levels of mind. Now, Freud separated the mind into distinct levels, each with their own role, their own function. The conscious mind, that contains all of the thoughts, memories, feelings, and wishes of which we are aware of at any given moment. This is the aspect of our mental processing that we can think and talk about rationally. This also includes our memory, which is not always part of our consciousness, but can be retrieved easily and brought into our awareness. The preconscious mind consists of anything that could potentially be brought into the conscious mind. Now, the unconscious mind is a reservoir of feelings, thoughts, urges, and memories that are outside of our conscious awareness. The unconscious contains content that could be unacceptable or unpleasant, such as feelings of pain, anxiety, or conflict. Freud likened the levels of the mind to an iceberg. The top of the iceberg that you can see above the water represents the conscious mind. The part of the iceberg that's submerged below the water but still visible is that preconscious. But the bulk of the iceberg that lies underneath, unseen, represents the unconscious mind. Whilst the information in the unconscious mind is outside of awareness, it continues to really influence on someone's behaviour. Some of the ways of the unconscious can affect behaviour include negative thoughts and mind chatter, self-defeating thoughts and behaviours, feelings of anger, compulsive behaviours, attitudes about others, unhealthy habits, as well as many more. So how does that impact our motivation? Well, let's take an event. Our manager's given us a task to do. We apply our filters, deleting, distorting and generalising the information we've been given, and then we apply our values to it. Is it something we agree with? Or maybe not? Do we see value in it? We then apply our state, considering we've had a terrible morning, it's been jam-packed, and now we're being asked to do something else. Or has it been an amazing morning? The sun is shining, we've got to go out for a great walk. Then becomes our behaviour. Out of all of that, then comes our behaviour, how we respond, how we feel about that situation, and how we look at our motivation. So we're starting to build a picture that with Freud's level of mind chatter, sitting in our unconscious mind, it becomes apparent how we start to experience feelings and impact our behaviour. So let's have a look at our final model, which is the NLP communication model. So this is also known as the face map. This model shows how we process all of our experiences and what our behaviour is. So we have the event, the experience. We then apply filters without realising we're doing this. Whether that is deleting information, distorting it, generalising, as well as considering the conscious and unconscious experiences. We then take our external recollection, add our values, our feelings, so that's our state, and physiology, and then from all those filters, thoughts, experiences, comes our behaviour. So it's important to consider that our mind chatter sits within our unconscious mind, which then impacts how we feel about situations, and therefore our behaviour. Whilst we now have a good idea of theory, let's have a look at another area. So we've got performance. When we're considering performance, it might be reliant on measuring performance through data, the metrics we use, or it really could be based on how we feel. It's important to think about how you measure your motivation and why you measure it that way. So, do you have a tick list? Does that measure your performance? Do you have a list in your head? What does your performance look like there? When we think about performance at home and then at work, do we measure it differently? For me, in work, performance is measured through a person's skill and their motivation. So if you have all the skill in the world, but no motivation, your performance is going to be impacted. And it's the same if you're the most motivated person in the world and you have no skill. You're still going to be limited in performance. So how do you measure your performance at work or at home? When we're considering our motivation, and I've alluded to this earlier, do you have goals? For a goal is a dream just written down. But of course, a goal could be anything from a long-term high-reach goal say, a new career, a new home or investment. Or it could be meditating every morning. We still need to apply the same principles to achieve these goals. And these are SMART objectives. So, are the goals broken down to be specific, measurable? Do we agree with them? Are they attainable? Are they realistic? And are they time-bound? So as mentioned previously, a goal could be a long-term goal, or it could be a short-term goal. But there are a few factors to consider. If it's a long-term goal or a large goal, you may want to consider having journey goals or step goals. Take our map on the screen. We might not be able to walk straight to the summit from the starting point. We might have to break that goal down further so it's realistic. Is the goal time-bound? We also need to consider and identify what the want or desire of the goal is. Why do we want it? What makes it important to us? And where are we at with it right now? So far, we've covered support, attitudes, and goal. Now, let's have a look at ideas and inspiration. Where do you get your ideas and inspiration from? Is it Insta? Is it TikTok? A really important thought for me is the grass is greener wherever you water it. As a society, we can be really quick to see something on social media and believe it to be true, and then have that desire rather than the desire we had 2 minutes earlier. In order for our motivation to be truly driven, we need to work out our goals. Think back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, having that solid foundation in place in order to achieve. Part of that is identifying the importance for our own goals and developing them rather than taking on someone else's. So how does this all evolve? When we're thinking about our own motivation, our own drive, and our own inspiration. For me, it's developed further within a coaching mindset. Coaching is about the formula you can see on the screen. When thinking back to how we manage performance, skill, and motivation, then we add in our potential. We're starting to fulfill self-actualization. Coaching then supports individuals to challenge and remove those interferences. Finally, we need to take a look at success. Out of any of these slides today, I'd urge you to really consider the next slide carefully. Make sure you reflect on this one. How do you celebrate your achievements? And do you reflect on what you've achieved? When you think about achievements, what do you consider to be an achievement? If you're a leader, do you celebrate with your team's achievements? And how does that drive motivation further? Reflection is such an important aspect of our life, and we all tend to gloss over it. We're so busy being on to the next task, the next topic, the next deadline. But we really should take time to think about what we've achieved, whether that's over the day, the week, or the month, as that really helps us drive our motivation, our purpose, and our goals further forward. But also we can give ourselves recognition for what we've done. As a leader, I used to do this with all my teams on a monthly basis. As a coach and consultant, I now have transferred that to my practice and to my clients. So all of that is great. We now understand the theory and the models behind motivation, but how on earth do we maintain it? Well, maintaining your motivation needs to include it being adaptable as well as resilient. If we were only to focus on the goals that we had set at school, are they still relevant? Or should those goals change as we change as individuals? When thinking about our goals, we need to ensure they stay current, which means we need to constantly review them, reflect them, adjust and adapt to make sure that they're right for us now and not only just in the future. Now, it would be remiss of me not to mention well-being when we're considering our motivation, maintaining it and being adaptable and resilient. This is the PERMA model. It's a fantastic model of well-being. It's straightforward but actually really effective, taking into account all the different areas of PERMA, so positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning and accomplishment. Being able to add in areas of this into your day-to-day can really support your well-being. It's also important to consider life-work harmony, so your life-work balance. Now, I call this life-work harmony, as to me, when you think about a balance, I think of 50-50. I think of an even split. And of course, work isn't always like that. It's important to be able to find ways to find that harmony, to meet the demands of both life and work. By applying all we've learned about motivation, the PERMA model, and performance, we can build that into our life flex, our life harmony, to find more resilience. So as I close today's session, I ask that you remember to review, reflect and adjust your goals, to consider that motivational theory, to think about your life-work harmony, to remember that performance comes from motivation and skill. Consider how you celebrate success and reflect on achievements and where your inspiration and ideas come from. But most importantly, be patient and kind to yourself. You've got this. Thank you so much for your time. And make sure that you connect with me on social media. That's Julie from BU Consultancy. Take care.